Welcome, beautiful people, to Villij Talks. My name is Latonya, and I am the mental health and trauma specialist of the Villij. Today, we will be speaking about all things anxiety. So, for those of you who may not know the Villij, we are a wellness organization for women of color to heal, expand, and connect. And again, if this may be your first time joining a Villij Talk, we basically meet alongside with wellness practitioners to explore various topics from nutrition, health, self-care, everything wellness. And again, as I said, tonight our talk will be specifically on anxiety. So before we begin, I'm just going to go through a few of our house rules. So this talk will last about an hour, and you can ask whatever questions you may have. However, we will only get to them at the end, where we will allocate about 5 to 10 minutes. So if you have any questions, feel free to use our chat box in order to ask them there. I have with me, joining me, Chantée Dardaine, who is a qualifying psychotherapist based in Toronto. And as well, I have Chanel, the co-founder of the Villij, in the chat. So if she's speaking to you guys, please respond back and have an enjoyable time tonight as we converse and discuss about anxiety. So let's just go right into it. Chantée, can you tell us a bit about yourself and what prompted you to become a psychotherapist?
Of course, and thank you for having me here tonight. I'm extremely excited to be talking about anxiety. It's something that is near and dear to me and something I'm really passionate about. So, this will be a great conversation. Yeah, so I'm born and raised in Toronto. I've been working in mental health for about 10 years now. I started off as a volunteer when I was 18 at the Center for Mental Health and Addiction at CAMH at college in Spadina. And I was in and out of mental health work, working in social services. I did my undergrad at the University of Toronto in Women and Gender Studies. And then I actually wanted to be a lawyer. So I was actually prepping myself to do law, got into the legal world for about 2 years and thought, I'm way too compelled to want to support people in a different way. So I left that and I did my master's in mental health counseling. And now I'm here. I started a private practice last year, October, called Self-Care TO. So yeah, I'm at 1 year. Time goes by quickly. And I also work at a clinic at Spadina and Queen called For Health's Sake. So yeah, this is like my full-time everyday life. And here I am.
Completely. I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
So
yeah,
let's not even, let's just get right into it. So how would you define mental health?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, to me, mental health is health. And, that's a slogan from CAMH that I loved because it's really just part of our overall system. Working with me, I use a lot of metaphors because that's how I learned about mental health. It was something I couldn't physically see, but I could feel. So throughout this chat, I definitely I'm going to bring about a lot of metaphors, but I think about it kind of like your phone. The external hardware is your physical body. The internal operating system is our mental health, right? So, in order for the whole system to function appropriately, they both need to be functioning, right? So, I always tell my clients it's about doing a system upgrade. It's letting go of the things that are no longer serving us and improving the things that are already there. So that's how I kind of see mental health, is just this like operational functioning system internally.
Absolutely. No, that makes perfect sense. I love that. I love that. So what are some of the ways that we can assess our own mental health?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. So the way that I think about it is always kind of correlating it to a common cold, right? So when I start to feel like, COVID aside, because I think if I had any tickle in my throat now, I'm like, oh my goodness. But if I had a tickle in my throat, I'm starting to feel sick, I knew sort of my at-home remedies. You know, I kind of knew I'm going to drink some more orange juice. I'll have some tea. I'll sleep. If I start to feel like I have a fever or I start to notice signs, I'll go and check in with my doctor maybe. The same thing is for mental health. I think we have to get to know our baseline. So how do we know we're feeling good? My favorite thing to do is a scaling question. So every day I wake up, I give my feeling a number. I say to myself, I'm feeling like a 6. My goal isn't a 10. My goal is to stay at a 6 and not get to a 5. If I feel like my coping tools aren't as helpful, or I can feel myself slipping away after I've checked in on day 3, then I know, okay, maybe I need to try something differently, or I need to reach out for some support. So that's a good way, is kind of allowing yourself to have a check-in question. Feelings are embodied, so we know that they're there, but they're not as obvious sometimes. So get to know sort of your baseline. It's okay to define a good version of yourself and not so good one. And it's okay to also ebb and flow between the two. So if I wake up and I'm at a 5, then I know to myself, I've set that number as kind of my baseline. So I'm going to do everything I can to go up, but I'll make sure I'm not going down. So, you know, it's a good kind of assessment to do with yourself, is just to have that morning check-in, or even at night, that nightly check-in, like, how did I feel today?
That's awesome. I've never done that.
Yeah.
And now I'm here thinking about it, like, what would my baseline number be? So I'm definitely going to speak to that as soon as we finish this talk. So for you all who are joining us, I have a poll question that I'm about to launch for you. And we just want to know, was mental health a topic discussed in your homes growing up? I know for me, it definitely was not. So I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll right now. And I can't wait to see your answers. Okay, they're coming in rapidly.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to wait 2 more seconds, and then I will show this to you guys. All right, so here are the results that we have. It seems like 82% of those joining us tonight, no, never, mental health was not a topic discussed in your homes. And then 18% were sometimes. Well, I'm really happy for the sometimes. And unfortunately, a large number of us, including myself, you know, we're at a no. Mental health was not something that was discussed in our homes. And I really do wonder why. Among communities of color, there's still a stigma associated with mental health. Well, I'll pose that question to you, Chantée. What do you think? Among our communities of color, is there still a stigma associated with the conversation around mental health?
Yeah, I think personally, I do give, you know, I've got some compassion for our older generation. You know, for example, like my parents migrated, you know, here, and at the time it was, you know, there's no manual that's sort of handed out at the airport that says, here are the conversations that, you know, you're probably going to have to face, right? So I do think that there is a stigma. And, you know, personally, I think when it comes to mental health, it's difficult to compare feelings. You know, if you break a bone, we're all breaking the same type of bone. You know, we all have the same fibia, or, you know, our knee bone, whatever. I'm not great in anatomy, but we all have the same bone. So if you break it, it's common. When it comes to saying to your parent, I'm sad, it's subjective. You know, so a lot of the time what we want to do is we really want to compare that sadness. You have to justify the sadness. There is this level of shame and guilt, especially in these communities, because, you know, when I think about my upbringing, how dare I go to my family and tell them I'm sad after I know my mom's going to say to me, do you know what I did to have to provide for you? And I, you know, when I came to this country, I was already comparing my external factors to my parents, you know. And now I think in this generation, we're realizing that You know, despite what's happening externally, it's what's happening internally. There's still that association of, if I talk about my mental health, then it's weak. You know, I can't even fix this. How will I fix a bigger problem, right? So, and how do I explain something where I don't even know what it is, right? We kind of have the language, depression and anxiety, but even if I say it out loud, okay, I'm anxious, what now, right? So sometimes there's a fear too, is, am I gonna have the appropriate resources? Will I be able to access these services? You know, will they be able to support me, or will I be another burden? You know, so I do think that there's so much embedded in our culture when it comes to expressing and talking about mental health. But I think the more we're doing this, and I'm, you know, being a person of color and being able to share my experience about my upbringing, it helps. I mean, I was curious as a child, so I would read books, you know, Girl Interrupted. That was like my first like mental health book, I think, you know, and movie, and I knew what it was, but I couldn't tell you how to navigate through it, you know. And but the more curious I got, I was lucky to have a home that allowed me to have the conversations. And I think that's what's happening now, is more people are having the conversations, and it doesn't have to be with your family. I'm just happy that people are having them with me.
Absolutely. I love that you said that. I love that you brought it down to generational, you know, specific, just because it's very true. You know, my family, my parents, they're not from here. So when they arrived, it really wasn't, hey, here are all the things you need to know. And just like all of us, parents, you know, young or old, we're all doing this whole life thing for the first time, you know?
Exactly.
I love that. And you spoke about, you know, being able to discuss and have conversations as a way to shift the culture of the stigma. Are there any other ways that we can assist our generation in shifting stigma?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think moving it away, you know, I think one thing that stops us is fear, you know, the fear, the uncertainty of what's to come after the conversation. I think the major shift needs to be a sense of empowerment. And it's hard to feel empowered when you're feeling depressed or anxious or any other type of symptom, right? But I think just to feel empowered that the reason why mental health is common is because it's common among so many people. And the more and more we start to use that language of common and similarity and community, and then we start to realize there's no I in mental health, right? It is not just a you problem, it's a we problem. You know, so when I'm working with communities, I'm not saying, what are you doing? I'm saying, what can we do together? So the more that we establish that community, then we're going to feel this like united front. I feel like we have this internal personal stigma, community stigma, family stigma. It's too many stigmas to have to kind of take down, right? So if we can kind of go in and as a united front, which is what we're trying to do in this generation right now, is let's make it an us problem. Let's not individualize mental health anymore of like, let's help them or you, but how can we all? You know, when one person gets diagnosed in a family, the entire family gets impacted, right? So when I used to work with families in the beginning, it was not just the personal support of the person who was holding the illness, it was the community impacted by it as well. So for me, when I advocate for mental health, I'm really advocating as what can we do, not what you can do. So I think that would be a good shift right now.
Absolutely, I agree. I agree. So I'm going to go ahead and launch our second polling question for the evening. Have you, and this is for everyone, have you had any experience dealing with anxiety? And I'm going to wait a few seconds for the answers to come in. Wow, right now I see we are at, okay. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So it seems like 89% of us, we've had frequent experience dealing with anxiety, and 11% rarely. I am so jealous of the 11% because I am a person who deals with anxiety. So thank you guys for sharing your responses. But, all right. So, Chantée, how would you differentiate between someone who experiences typical amount of fear versus anxiety?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think sometimes there's a strong correlation between the two. My metaphor, because my metaphors that I have for anxiety is a smoke detector. A smoke detector goes off in my apartment 10 times out of 10, there's no fire, but the purpose of it is to warn you of potential threat or danger. That's what anxiety is. It's that fear detector. Our amygdala in our brain is detecting this fear, and it's sending these physical symptoms to tell us of a potential threat or danger. There are 11 types of anxiety and related disorders, 11 of them. So when we use the word anxiety, I always remind people, where are you in that spectrum? Of anxiety, there's agoraphobia, there's generalized anxiety disorder, there's health anxiety, there's hoarding disorder, panic disorder, PTSD is under the anxiety umbrella, separation anxiety, social anxiety. Then there's phobia, specific phobia, right? So I think psychoeducation is really important and something I do with my clients, because once again, language isn't universal. It's just a word that we've kind of just created for ourselves. And sometimes when people come in, they say, I have this, I remind them, let's just look at what's going on. Because at the end of the day, fear or anxiety, it means we have to cope. So however we want to kind of call it, but definitely I would say that there is, in order for anxiety to be present, there is usually an indicator of a type of fear. And anxiety is kind of protecting you from that fear.
Okay, yeah. Can you tell us what are some of the noticeable signs of anxiety?
And that's one thing with anxiety, is that the physical symptoms that come with anxiety are real. They are real. We're not making them up. So when I'm going through the symptoms of anxiety with people, I'm like, you've got sweaty palms, you've got nausea, you can have heart racing, breathlessness, insomnia, there are dryness of the mouth. Like, there's so much that you can have of these physical symptoms of anxiety, right? But when we're looking at sort of the everyday specifics, it's kind of this idea of not being able to regulate yourself. There's this terminology called the window of tolerance, right? So in your window of tolerance, a normal day is your ebbs and flows. You wake up, something bad happens, but you're able to regulate yourself to keep moving forward. Let's say, for example, you wake up, you take a shower, it's cold, you're annoyed, but then your friend buys you a coffee, you're feeling better, somebody sends you an email, now you're bothered again. So we kind of are flowing through. When we're outside of our window of tolerance, it's called, when we're in a hyper arousal, is anxiety. So we're feeling overwhelmed. We're feeling maybe a sense of panic, a sense of restlessness, irritability. A lot of people use spiral. I'm spiraling. My thoughts are spiraling. My thoughts are snowballing. I can't really stop myself from thinking, so I have to distract myself. So those are some common areas to be mindful of that basically will increase these physical sensations, right? So when we think about the anxiety, we go back to that smoke detector, that our alarm in our body are those physical indicators, but those are kind of the everyday ones to look for. I know for me personally, it's racing heart. When I feel like my heart rate getting a little higher, I'm like, okay, what's going on right now? What am I anxious about? Or what am I excited about? Or what am I fearful of? I try to give myself options.
Yeah.
I had a terror for, like, I had a phobia of flying for a long time, and I had never experienced anxiety like that before because it was situational. So I didn't have it every day, but when I booked a flight, I could feel it in my body. So yeah, that racing heart out of nowhere is like a good indicator for me. And I think when you get to know yourself, you'll get to know your anxiety, your fear, or your excitement, or your nerves, or your worries, whatever it is. And that will be like that one thing. Some people have sweaty palms too.
Yeah.
And even talking tonight, when I get excited and I look forward to things, I can feel myself like, just like that nervous energy, but it's not something to be afraid of. We can sit in it. Right?
Yes. I love that you said that we can sit in it, because sometimes it feels so uncomfortable. And you mentioned, the physical and the emotional symptoms that we can have. The emotional could be the racing thoughts. I know for myself, most recently, one of my physical manifestations of anxiety is actually my throat feeling like it's closing up.
Yeah.
And I had it up to yesterday, actually. And I was like, oh, no. I had to tell myself, anxiety, you will not win today. This is not your moment, So I have a question for the chat box. What type of anxiety symptoms have you experienced? And Lucy, I had a quick question for you. Have you gotten over your fear of flying? And if so, how did you do it?
Yes, of course. So, this is something I'm really honest about with people, because anxiety is real. Like, I didn't get on a flight for 5 years because I was so good at navigating through it. Like, I would just normalize a staycation. But I really began to expose myself to the fears. And that was the only way. And I learned it's not about getting rid of anxiety. It's about managing the symptoms of anxiety. The more we're focused on getting rid of it, it's impossible. We need anxiety. Anxiety helps us walk down the dark alleys. Anxiety kind of preps you sometimes for, a big interview. We need anxiety to survive. So what I learned, once I figured that out, I was like, okay, I'm not going to fly without it, but I can fly with it. Then it completely changed my entire perspective of it. So when I go to an airport now, I don't wait for my anxiety. I just cope with it beforehand. I do my deep breathing. I ground myself. I love having when takeoff, I know that's my moment. So I have an item. I love Play-Doh. It's my favorite sensory item for myself. So I have Play-Doh in my hand or something I can squish. And when I notice the symptoms, I remind myself that this fear makes me feel like all is going to fail, but I know this fear is just a subjective of my thoughts.
Absolutely.
So because we have to be mindful that the brain doesn't know the difference between emotional or physical pain. It just knows pain. So when I'm thinking these horrid thoughts about what will happen to me on a plane, my body thinks I'm currently experiencing it. So I have to remind my body, I'm safe. This is just my imagination. These are just unhelpful thoughts. So when I say I've gotten over my fear, it's not that I've gotten over the anxiety. I've just learned how to manage myself and keep myself in that window of tolerance.
Absolutely.
But it was trial and error of finding your coping tools.
Trial and error. Absolutely. I see through the chat, a lot of people can relate to a racing heart, a racing mind, stomach issues. I can totally relate to that, Courtney. Yes. Tight chest, migraine, so many, there are so many ways that we can experience physical and emotional symptoms of anxiety. The spectrum is just,
wow. And when we think about just briefly, just the science of it, because we're going in that fight or flight response, the blood is pumping everything to your feet and to your hands. So your body actually stops functioning. That's why we feel nausea in our stomach, our blood sugars are increasing. So because the body's like, we need to run away, or we need to fight, or we're going to freeze.
Yeah.
So why we feel all these different types of sensations in our body is because it's trying to work to protect us. So that's why that big one, I'm okay, I am safe is such a helpful grounding statement to just repeat in your head over and over again.
Absolutely. And, we had a conversation before, and you shared that in your practice, you use a lot of CBT, so cognitive
Mm-hmm.
behavior therapy. And I think it'll be
Mm-hmm.
so important for us to just share a little bit about what exactly that is, because I think even understanding CBT can help some of us learn how to cope
Mm-hmm.
with anxiety. So could you go ahead and
For
briefly
sure.
introduce us to CBT, cognitive behavior therapy?
For sure. So when we are looking at anxiety, like making the assessment of it, we're looking at physical responses, we're looking at thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, right? So in order for you to fill within that assessment, you have to kind of have these 4 different clusters, right? So cognitive behavioral therapy is based on the principle that when we have unhelpful ways of thinking, it impacts our emotions, which then impacts our behavior. So very short, the premise is if I think unhelpful, I'll feel unhelpful, I'll do unhelpful. So for example, if I'm thinking I'm going to crash in a plane, I'm feeling scared, so I won't fly. So what cognitive behavioral therapy says, if I can change this automatic thought to a rational thought, a positive thought, a constructive thought, a necessary thought, then it will impact that feeling, right? So if I think good, I'll feel good, I'll do differently. So that's basically, in short, what cognitive behavioral therapy does. But cognitive behavioral therapy encompasses relaxation strategies. So one of the strategies in CBT is calm breathing. So working on diaphragmatic breathing, so slowing down your breath, because we know a racing heart and breathlessness, we need to catch our breath sometimes. Another one is progressive muscle relaxation. So squeezing your body really tight and then releasing it shows your body with tension can come relaxation. We're doing realistic thinking. So we're taking those unhelpful and unrealistic thoughts and creating more realistic and balanced thoughts. So what I do with my client is I say, take your bad thought and complete the sentence, right? So what are we leaving out here? Are we forgetting? Are we only trying to justify your thought, or are we trying to see the whole picture? So if my thought was, I'm going to crash in a plane, and that's it, I walk away from that thought. Me completing the sentence was, okay, I'm going to crash in a plane, but the odds of that happening are very low.
Yeah.
Here's the science behind it. So I'm really completing that sentence so it's more balanced. So it's not about only replacing, it's about balancing your perspective. And there's a lot of steps in cognitive behavioral therapy, like exposure, so exposing yourself to fears, preventing yourself from doing certain coping tools. What I like about CBT is that it's evidence-based. So a lot of research has been done to prove the success with managing anxiety and depression. We see results in just 6 sessions with CBT. So a lot of programs will run 6 to 12 sessions. And it's very, there's a lot of accountability in CBT. There's a lot of homework, so there's a lot of take-home material so that you're applying these new practices in your day-to-day. I meet with people for 15 minutes. The real work happens outside of a session. So I'm providing my clients with different types of tools, and CBT offers those tools and gives you a plan. So that's why I like to use CBT. Do I use it on its own? Normally, no. I like to overlap different modalities together, but it's definitely something that I know now the Ontario government is trying to create free CBT. There's a lot of pilot projects right now going on at different hospitals that are providing that and are seeing, in just a short amount of sessions, there can be some tangible takeaway so you can apply it to your own practice at home.
Thank you. So essentially, like you said, it's the idea of, you're feeling anxious, you have an automatic thought. which
Yeah.
results into the way you start to feel, and then it impacts your behavior. I love it. So
Yeah.
simple.
So easy. It's always easier said than
Yeah,
done until you're feeling anxious
absolutely.
and you're like, wait, what do I do first? Do I think, or do I feel, or do I do?
Absolutely.
So
Um,
once, it's practice.
I want to get into cognitive distortions just a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So could you,
Mm-hmm.
one, explain what is a cognitive distortion, and can you describe the most common ones? Because I'm sure that we can relate to them.
For sure. Yeah. So, cognitive distortions basically contribute to those negative, kind of unhelpful automatic thoughts that we have. We all do them. It's our pattern of thinking. So some of the common ones are all or nothing thinking, overgeneralization, mental filtering, discounting the positive, jumping to conclusions. My favorite, the should statements. Emotional reasoning is another one of my favorites. Labeling and blame. Those are the top 10 common ones. And the reason why this is important is because we begin to label our thoughts. Just because we think it does not make it true.
It does
right?
not make
So
it true.
Doesn't make it true. So when we have a thought, so like let's say my thought was, I'm going to crash, for example, on a plane. That would be considered I'm overgeneralizing, I'm all or nothing thinking, I'm discounting the positive. So just with that one thought, I'm finding myself filtering through these different patterns of thinking. Once you find your pattern of thinking, it's such an easy way then to reframe. So if I have an automatic thought and it's negative, and I say to myself, I'm discounting the positive, that triggers me to say, I need to include the positive when I reframe my thought, right? It's a good way to just label our unhelpful thinking.
Yeah.
And these are things that you can really easily Google, common cognitive distortions, read about them and see kind of where you fit in. Which one kind of calls at you? And then that can be the intention for yourself. Like, let me observe my thoughts and see which pattern I'm fulfilling.
Awesome. Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's one that I do, I think is the, when you turn everything into like a
catastrophe. Oh yes. Yeah, catastrophizing. Yeah.
That one, that is me. Yeah. Can you explain that one a little bit?
Well, so that word is so hard sometimes. So I use like magnification because it's so much easier sometimes. When you basically exaggerate the importance of your problems and shortcomings. Yeah. So what you end up doing is that you minimize the importance of like the desirable qualities, and you only magnify or catastrophize the ones that are bad. Yeah. Right? Or the problems or the shortcomings. That one is, that's a really common one as well, right? It's kind of, it's not, I don't like using the word blowing things out of proportion, but you're blowing the negative piece.
Absolutely.
So it takes up and it kind of distorts your thinking, right? Because it takes away, it doesn't give you the opportunity to see the benefits or to see the positives, because we're really focused on just kind of the negative.
Yes.
What could go wrong?
What can go wrong? So even right now, as I messed up that word, I'm probably going to finish this conversation and think, oh my gosh, all I'll remember is remembering that word. I probably won't, but that's definitely what
well, now that you've called yourself out, you're going to hold yourself accountable to not.
Absolutely.
Right? So whenever that thought pops in your mind, you'll be like, girl, no, I said not today.
Exactly.
Right?
Challenge that thought, not today.
Challenge it.
So for you guys who joined us in our chat, could you relate to any of those cognitive distortions? Perhaps it's blowing things a little bit out of proportion, or maybe it's thinking I should, and using that terminology and putting all that pressure on you, the shoulds. Anything at all?
Mind reading is a big one.
Reading, yes.
Yeah, fortune telling.
Absolutely. I think especially mind reading is a very big one, where someone does something and automatically you start to think like, oh, they're thinking this or they're thinking that.
Yeah.
Very
And
interesting.
always a negative, right? Imagine if we can
Always.
mind read the positive.
Always, always. Oh, I like this. Simi said she is the queen of very elaborated worst case scenarios. Oh my goodness, I can relate. I love that. Amplifying the negative. Victoria, thank you. A lot of regret about things I've done in the past. I should have done this or that. But like I said before, you know, we are all on this journey for the first time and we make mistakes because we're human.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, and a good one for the worst case scenario too, like my favorite reframing is worst case, best case, and likely case. Always forget about likely case.
I love that.
We always assume like, yeah, the only spectrum is like it's either going to be really good or really bad, but what's really going to happen?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Definitely important to challenge those thoughts that we have. Can you give us some, you know, examples of ways we can challenge these thoughts?
Yeah, I think with the overgeneralizations, for example, is a good one to pick up because sometimes we'll use the word always or never, you know, and that's a good call out to yourself. If you end up saying like, I'll never do this, or this always happens to me, then that's a good way to call yourself out to say, am I overgeneralizing? Am I just focusing on a single negative event? And allowing that to kind of define it all.
Yeah.
The should labels is a big one. Oh yeah. Should is, you know, I should do this, I shouldn't do that. My favorite is like, who told you you should and why should you? Because if it's a should, then it would be a must. You know, a should has, I'm serving somebody else. A must, I'm serving me. So that is my favorite one, is turn your shoulds into must. You know, mental filtering also is, you know, we're picking a single negative detail and dwelling on it excessively. And when we do that, our vision of all reality becomes darkened, you know? So it's kind of like you drop the ink on that disclosure in a beaker of water, and then everything, now the entire beaker is black, right, of the ink. So, you know, if we receive, a good one is performance reviews. You get a performance review from work and they say you've done great, but all you leave is with the but. Yeah. You know, and doing that is another one, is you're just discounting the positive, and that doesn't serve you either. So that's a great question, is like, how does it serve me to think this way? If I already feel bad about myself, for example, I leave this performance review and feeling bad, do I now owe it to myself to judge myself the rest of the day? Or what would make me feel good? What would make me feel good is to recognize the good things that they said. So sometimes it's looking at yourself as a third person, you know, and saying, what does she need right now? Like, does she need to, you know, be told that she should only focus on that if she already feels bad? No, she needs to feel supported right now. You know, so that's like one thing I do with myself all the time, is I always step out, observe, and then I go back in and I participate differently.
No, I like that. I know for myself, I oftentimes tell myself, you know, be gentle with yourself. And you have to remind yourself to do that, because for whatever reason, we are very gentle and compassionate to other people. But then when it comes to ourselves, it's like you become your own worst enemy. But why?
Oh yeah,
you know?
Yeah, because we're the inner critic. The older we get, the more judgmental we are to ourselves.
Absolutely, to ourselves.
Yeah.
How can we learn, you know, to identify our anxiety triggers?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that takes you becoming an observer. You know, we're really good at participating in our life because we're just going with the flow. We're on autopilot sometimes. So to be an observer is just take a day sometimes and just watch what you're doing, watch how you're feeling. That's the only way to get to know your triggers and being okay with them. A trigger is, we use this word again a lot, you know, I'm triggered by something, but because we're triggered by it, I think sometimes we just get okay with that. It's a trigger. That's it. I've labeled it as such, but now what, right? So just be mindful when we use that word trigger too. It's like, what is the, how am I going to cope with this trigger? But a trigger is always something that's going to have an emotional response. So sometimes the best thing to do is listen to your body. Let your body decide what a trigger is and what it's not. So you remember we talked about like that scaling question. Like, so if I'm feeling a 5 all day and then all of a sudden I feel off, I ask myself what triggered me, what went wrong, where did it go wrong? Like what happened here? Sometimes we have to go back and be an investigator in our life, and we're not looking for a problem, but we're looking for improvement. How can I make sure that I'm not repeating this tomorrow? So for example, if I'm triggered by, let's say, getting emails at 9 o'clock because then I feel like I have to respond to them, I just turn off my notifications then. Let me not keep getting triggered by something that I know it is, but the only way I knew I was being triggered was because I felt a difference in my body language. So we use our verbal vocabulary really well, but we got to know our body language more and like let that be just a way to give you some insight.
Absolutely. Kim said, I love the idea of thinking of ourselves in the third person. What does she need? Oh, that is amazing, especially for empaths. Absolutely. What does she need? And I love what you said about, feel how you are feeling, because very often we want to run away from whatever the unpleasant feeling is, but you really need to be able to sit and assess and understand. So when it comes back again, you're able to recognize what that is.
Yeah. I love that. And that's just like embedded in our culture. When a child is crying, our instinct is to stop the child from crying instead of watching the child cry and hold their hand through it and let them know it's okay for you to sit there. It's human instinct to attach to pleasure and run from pain. But there's so much growth in sitting in discomfort, so much. And sometimes you just need 5 minutes. We're not asking for sit in discomfort all day, but give yourself 5 minutes, and that helps to develop and strengthen that operating system, your mental health.
So could you share some coping skills that we can implement to help us cope when we are triggered?
Yeah, I mean, some good coping skills would be the one first is to sit in it, right? Is to, when you're feeling triggered, really asking yourself, because there's a big difference between reacting and responding. So a trigger, you want to react to it, but we need to learn how to respond to it. So we're getting to the need instead of just reacting to the behavior. So if I'm triggered, it's so easy to fall into that feeling. Like especially if it's like an anger trigger, it's so easy to get pulled into that and then become reactive with it instead of responding to that need of like, what do I need right now? When we go back to that idea of window of tolerance, it's always about when you're feeling hypo and that anxiety, think, what do I need to feel calm? That's just a question. I love doing an inventory of my coping tools so I know what I have handy. Because sometimes when you have so many coping tools, you just don't use them. You're just like, so have something handy. This is my go-to when I feel calm. Let it be transferable also. I do feel like every trigger is going to trigger something different in you. One of my favorite transferable coping tools is a breath, because you don't need anything but yourself. So taking a breath, doing that progressive muscle relaxation is just going to help you feel grounded in that moment. But always when you're triggered, get to the source of it. Don't allow yourself to just get re-triggered and be okay with it. We're too okay with our triggers. We kind of accept them for what they are because they're out of our control, but we can at least manage it, regulate it, and shorten the duration of it. And that can be our personal goal. We can't control it happening, but we can control how long it lasts. We can try at least to control that. So take a breath, find that one tool that you can use that's transferable.
Okay. And at what point, should a person who experiences anxiety seek professional assistance? And when they do, what type of assistance do you think they should go to first? Would that be
Hmm.
therapy? Would that be, a medical professional? Would that be a naturopath, a naturopathic doctor? Who would this
Mhm.
person be?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. Um, Personally, in my practice, I don't see people who, like, to me, therapy is not a place to look at what's not working. It's also a place to look at what is working. So I don't feel like clients need to wait until they're in a crisis to see me. I'm always happy to work on, preparation, prevention, and maintenance, right? So when it comes to therapy, it's also when it comes to anybody, if it's a therapist, it's your doctor, a naturopath, you really just have to ask yourself, like, what purpose am I trying to serve here? Do I want education? Do I want tools? Do I want a place to talk? Because every experience is going to look different. A doctor's office looks very different than a therapy office, which looks different than a naturopathic office, right? So it's really also getting to know yourself. I think having options is the best. That gives you choice. And when you're seeking help, you need choice because not everything will work for everyone. When I meet a client and I feel like they're in a state of crisis and you need some extra support, then we're going to out resource and look for additional referrals. We can create a team to help. Let's get some information from your doctor. For example, I don't diagnose people. It's not my scope of practice. So I'll ask the client, are you looking for a diagnosis? If they say yes, and I say to them, okay, great, let's get you lined up to see your doctor then. Are you looking for holistic intervention supplements? I don't do, that's great, let's do that then. So sometimes therapy can just even be a point of resource.
Yes.
I offer free 20-minute consultation calls, for example, and a lot of therapists do utilize those 20-minute calls to find this out. Where should I go first? Who should I see first? Don't be on one wait list forever. Find, at least kind of get that education from that professional, whether it's your doctor, a naturopath, or anybody in the wellness industry or a therapist, to get that point of reference, and then they can give you the resources to outsource. I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we don't think that way. We think like all or nothing, like, oh, if I'm going to do therapy, then I need to find a therapist. I need to be committed. I need to go. But really and truly, it's a journey.
It
It's
is.
trial and error, is finding what works for you. And it's knowing, what are you really looking for? What are you looking to accomplish? Like you said before, is it to be on medication, or is it to speak to someone and go through thoughts? So yeah, no, that was definitely helpful. So you
And if you
definitely.
don't know that, I don't mean to cut you off, but also if you don't know where to start too, it's having the conversation with somebody even closest to you. Because I'm learning from a lot of the clients, they're surprised when they're like, oh, I told my friend I'm seeing somebody, and then they told me that they were seeing somebody. So I guarantee you, somebody in your circle may already be doing it, and I know it's sometimes hard to, but once again, it's a we, right? So if you don't know where to start, you can at least maybe start with a close friend.
Absolutely. So previously you shared about the idea of doing, doing breathing exercises. I think that's a great coping skill. Like you said, all you need is yourself, and you can do it anywhere. But do you have any other coping mechanisms that we can use whenever we are being triggered by anxiety?
Of course, yeah. So for me, it's like with anxiety too, sometimes anxiety is triggered by control. That it's usually the things that are out of our control, So it's so important to focus on the things that you do have control over instead of feeling bad about the things that you don't. When you feel like things are out of your control, it's really easy to spiral. But what can you control? There's always something that you can at least participate in that can help you in that moment, whatever it is, in that anxiety provoking moment or that trigger. I think anxiety and fear causes a lot of physical tension. When we talk about those physical symptoms leave residual feelings. Sometimes I may not feel the heart racing, but I'll feel my shoulders. And the tension in my shoulders tells me I'm stressed or I'm anxious, whatever it looks like. So moving your body is a great tool. Once again, it's just your body and you. My favorite thing to do is to like dance in my room. And the purpose of it is to literally release everything that's no longer serving me so I can make room for things that are. One thing that when it comes to your coping tools, because a lot of the time people feel that they're not doing enough, or they don't have the good coping tools, or they're not learning. Whatever you do in your day-to-day, just put an intention to it. I'm doing this. Even if it's taking a sip of water, I'm doing this for the intention to feel a sense of calm. Everything can serve your purpose if you bring some intention to it. You know, that's how I personally define my wellness, right? I define wellness as asking yourself, what do you need? And then giving yourself permission to follow through with the request. And sometimes all you need is a self-hug. All you need is to listen to a song. So coping is so much more accessible than what it's been advertised to be. So many people see me and tell me they don't cope. And then I ask them, like, do you shower? Do you read a book ever? Do you watch Netflix? Do you lay in bed? Do you like to cook? Do you eat? Do you like to smell things? Do you light a candle? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, that's coping. Yeah. That's coping. Just bring the intention to it. When I light my candle, even the act of it is an intention for serenity. You know, so one of my favorite exercises is literally creating here's what I do, here's my intention. Just create a nice little side-by-side chart.
I love that. Creating an intention with whatever it is that you're doing, because anything can really be your coping mechanism, and you don't have to rely on, you know, what Google tells you. It's whatever makes you feel calm and brings you back down to your center. Love it, love it. Okay, so here is the last question for you before we go into our question and answer portion. In light of the current COVID-19 pandemic, many of us have been experiencing more so a situational anxiety. What tips can you leave with us?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think with COVID, that first tip is like just focus on what you can control, because there's so much uncertainty. One thing that I'm really, really, really focused on right now is finding the items that will bring you comfort. Like, how can I just feel comfortable? Because if there's a lot of certainty, it leaves a lot of discomfort. So get ahead of it. You know, set yourself up for success, set your room up, set yourself, everything up for success, and ask yourself, what will make me comfortable? That's like my favorite thing that I'm thinking of. Also, another thing for situational anxiety, specifically with COVID, is find time for play. I know it sounds like a simple thing, but when I say find time for play, I mean find time for creative play, like childhood play. The things that brought you joy as a kid. That's why I love Play-Doh. You know, I'm an adult. I can still do this. It brings me joy. I've got clients who love to, you know, play with cars. I told them, go and get them. You know, find time for creative and fun, light play. You know, find one hobby, just one. Focus on one thing and let that be the thing that can ground you. One thing I love in meditation is when the mind wanders, bring it back to the breath. I use that in my everyday life. So when I feel like I'm drifting away with my anxiety because of COVID, what can I bring it back to? And sometimes we just need that one thing to anchor us. You know, yeah, coloring is amazing. Like, there's so many things that you can do. Coloring, and think about your self-care as this, or even these coping tools, as physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. You know, find one that fits in every little basket. How am I physically coping? Am I moving my body? How am I mentally coping? Am I reframing my thoughts? How am I emotionally coping? Am I checking in with my mood? And how am I spiritually coping? Am I lighting a candle? Am I smelling my sage incense? I leave one on my desk with like my little scent bomb. You know, like, a spiritual doesn't have to be religious for everyone. It can just be how we are speaking to our soul. You know, so if you want to take one thing from each, become an expert at it, love it, enjoy it, thrive in it. So when COVID is taking you somewhere else, you have an anchor and you have options.
Absolutely. No, that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
You know, bringing us back to our childhood loves and our joys and what it
Love
is
it.
that we did, you know. I know for
Yeah.
me, when COVID began, I had to take myself off of social media for a little bit because there was
Yeah.
so much news coming at me, and really being able to
Mm-hmm.
filter out, you know, what I cannot handle in that moment.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
wow. This was a great conversation. Thank you,
I
Chantée.
can't believe time went by so quickly.
I
I
know.
told you I can chat about this all the time.
So
Such a great
now,
chat, though.
yeah, absolutely. So now we're going to open the floor for questions for Chantée to
Mhm.
respond to. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop it in our chat. And yeah, let's hear what Chantée has to say. There's actually a comment here. It says, I heard coloring can help too. I agree. I definitely agree. Last week I painted for the first time since
Nice.
childhood, and
Yeah.
it was so amazing. I felt unbelievable after. So do you have any tips for those experiencing anxiety, racing thoughts that induce insomnia or trouble sleeping?
Mhm. Yeah. So, it's interesting because anxiety loves stillness. Racing thoughts love the calm, so like right before bed, when you're bored, boredom, that idea of like not doing anything. Um, I love the idea of like creating a bedtime routine, and holding yourself accountable to it. So create like a 12 nights. The next 12 nights, this is my bedtime ritual, my bedtime routine. Especially when you're having racing thoughts at night, that can be a time that you can pull out a tool. My favorite tool is the thought record. You can Google this. There's PDFs that already have questions for you. Bring your journal out and do your thought record right before bed. It's sometimes it's about using what's happening and trying to not stop it. The more we try to prevent our thoughts, the louder they are. So we want to recognize them. Another thing to do is, if you have to repeat it 100 times, lay in bed and say, this is just an unhelpful thought. These are just unhelpful thoughts. This is just an unhelpful thought, right? Another great one is using your five senses. It's a great grounding tool. 5 things I can see, 4 things I can hear, 3 things I can smell, 2 things I can feel, 1 thing I can taste. Even doing a mental exercise like counting backwards from 60 is really helpful. Taking a breath. I personally love doing a meditation right before bed, and I don't do like a conventional. I have my conventional meditation where I do it, and my one in my bed, I'm laying down, and I'm just literally bringing myself down. I can be listening to something calming. So these are things that you can do as part of your ritual, and try it for 12 nights, because you want to create a habit and you want to hold yourself accountable to the habit. So try it out. This is the idea, unfortunately, with trial and error. I wish it was easier, but we can't give up on ourselves because one thing doesn't work, because it just takes one thing to work.
Yeah, thank you. How do we deal with guilt of setting boundaries and saying no?
Yes, this is also a great question. Setting I love boundaries. Why? Because I don't think we all are comfortable with boundaries. The more that we get used to boundaries, the more we'll all become used to boundaries. I think that's what makes it hard to set boundaries, is because it's kind of unfamiliar to set boundaries. But understanding that boundaries aren't just physical, they're also emotional, right? And the reason why we have limits is because we're not expected to have open availability to ourselves. This is why we have hours of operation. We need to do the exact same thing for ourselves. This is our hour of operation, right? So when I set boundaries, this is what I do. I have soft limits and hard limits. A soft limit is negotiable, a hard limit is not. A hard limit doesn't need to be explained, because The purpose of it is because I need to show up for me so I can show up for you. And when it comes to saying no, a really good stepping stone to going from somebody who says yes to no is not right now. So start there. Provide people with an alternative. So don't say no, just say, you know what, not right now, but I can do it tomorrow. I had a hard time saying no when I first started off because I'm like, people are asking for help. I can't say no. I don't want to be somebody who turns them away. But I realized that the version of me who was showing up for myself and setting boundaries was a way better version for the people who I was showing up for. So I learned to say not right now. And people will respect that. So try that out first. It's a good stepping stone before you get to know.
Awesome. I like that response. That was great.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Next question. Ooh, what is the difference between anxiety and an actual panic attack?
Yeah, that's a good question. So a panic attack is just an intense reaction to ongoing anxiety, if that makes sense. So remember we were talking about our baseline at the beginning of the conversation. So like if my anxiety level is at a high level and I can learn how to function within that hypoarousal, I will then be more pre-exposed to getting a panic attack. So a panic attack is kind of a system overload. So think about you're having all of these physical symptoms and now your body is having this huge overload of sensation and sensory, and it just kind of needs to do that in order for it to regulate itself. Why it sounds like I'm making it sound like it's not a nightmare, it is. I know it is. And you know, the hard part about panic attacks is that there's a lot of uncertainty of how long they last. So it's so important to realize that post panic attack, you begin to start to work. That's a great indicator of how am I working on my everyday anxiety so I don't get to this place of having a reaction. So a panic attack is a reaction to that ongoing anxiety, if that makes sense.
Awesome, yeah. And last question. Do you have any tips for us to help others in our lives who are feeling anxious?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite resources is Anxiety Canada. It is my favorite resource. Anxiety Canada has the best resource. They also have this great program for adults, for youth, and for families. And one of the programs they have for adults is called MAP, and it creates like this really great mapping tool for your anxiety. They have 42 online free classes, basically, on how to get to know your anxiety, how to manage your anxiety. They provide great strategies. So if you're looking for if you're looking for supporting somebody, the best thing to do is to offer resources. So I would say Anxiety Canada. And also sometimes when you are helping people who have a mental health, as you go back to those boundaries, it's making sure we're also setting limits, right? Because we're all personally going through things. So it doesn't mean that you can't be there for your friends. So just doing a check-in with yourself. Do I have the capacity to hold this with them? Not for them, but with them. We're all about collaboration. The same thing in my therapy session. I'm with you on the journey. I'm not watching you. I'm with you on there. And then when you're good, I'm walking away and I'm leaving you to continue it on your own. So, you know, when you're supporting people, just support with each other. And listen, if you have anxiety also, this is a great way for you to then to work together, you know, share tools together, share insights together. How are you feeling better? Sometimes it's great to talk about what's not working. I get it. You know, I heard a quote where like, we get to know people better when we're complaining together. But this can also be a great way to learn together.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you guys for your questions. Great questions.
Yes, thanks so much. Yeah.
So Chantée, where can we find you?
Yeah, so you can follow me at Self-Care TO on Instagram. My website also is Self-Care TO. I'm a virtual therapist, so I see anybody throughout the world. I'm currently on a wait list right now, but I try my best to put as many resources as I can online. And yeah, that's where you can find me. And like always, now that you've met me, like send me a DM, send me a message. I'm always happy to provide resources whenever you need them.
Love it, love it. So selfcareto.com. Perfect. Thank you so much, Chantée. And for you all who have joined us tonight, thank you again for joining us. We have an upcoming Villij Talk on October 29th at 7 p.m. And that Villij Talk will be on immunity and nutrition. As well, you can watch our past episodes on YouTube. On YouTube, it is The Villij, and we'll put a link below as well. And if you found tonight valuable, we encourage you to donate to support the Villij Fund, helping keep these experiences accessible to the community. So support the Villij Fund, and thank you again for being with us, taking this time out of your day to discuss all things anxiety. Thank you again, Chantée.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thanks for having me tonight.
Have a great night.